Is there one that sticks out for you in particular as the best match of his match of the year collection?
For me, it's two. Let me just say this about the 2012 Undertaker Triple H one too. You know, that's a match where you can go back and watch that now, and all you need to tell someone who's never seen a single minute of wrestling in their lives is Undertaker is undefeated at WrestleMania. Triple H is one of the biggest stars in the business. Shawn Michaels is his best friend, and The Undertaker retired him. All you need to give them is that brief synopsis of story, and you can watch that match, and it's an instant classic. Yeah. So that tells you all you need to know about his performance in that match and how he helped put it over the top. So I agree with you completely that he deserves a 12. In terms of his best matches, I'm going to say it's a tie between 2004 and 2007. The triple threat match with Triple H and Chris Benoit at WrestleMania 20. I mean, being there live for me maybe helped it, but it was an incredible match between three guys who were at the very pinnacle of the industry at very different points in their careers, no less. And it was a 5-star match. There's no doubt about that. And then 2007, I mean, you had Cena and Michaels had two of the top three candidates, or two of the top three for the match of the year, with the Iron Man match and the WrestleMania match. And I shouldn't say Iron Man, I should say the 16.
Yeah, it wasn't supposed to be an Iron Man match. I mean, and that's what was so great about it, that it organically went nearly an hour.
And it was Shawn Michaels at his finest and John Cena at his finest, and there they were battling for an hour. You know, between that and the WrestleMania match happening within, a month of each other, that was an incredible feud too. And that particular match of the year winner might be one of Michael's best matches of his second run, so to speak.
For my money, it's WrestleMania 25, 2009, him and The Undertaker. I don't even qualify it. It's the greatest match I've ever seen, period. I was lucky enough to be there in person. And to me, it's perfection.
It was a great match. The match that my favorite Shawn Michaels, I was never a huge Michaels fan. I never really kind of, I respect his work, but I never liked the persona. I never liked, earlier in his WWE run, whenever it came time for him to drop a title, he'd have the mysterious injury, he'd lose his smile, I never really liked the guy from that, and I know he's kind of changed his ways a little bit, and since the comeback, but still, I've never been a huge Michaels fan. Although, like I said, I do respect his work. My favorite Michaels match of the year was actually 2005, his match against Kurt Angle at WrestleMania. And I think that one was a great one because you talk about two guys being in their prime, like you said like Louis said with Cena and Michaels. You look at Angle and Michaels, and man, those guys complemented each other so well. It was such an athletic match. It didn't need any kind of gimmickry or backstory or anything else. It was just two guys who were arguably the best in the world at what they do at that time, going at it full force. So that was my favorite from the Michaels Match of the Year run.
Well, you're right, Dan. I think by his own admission, not the nicest guy for the first half or more than the first half of his career. And he writes a lot about that in his new book. It's called Wrestling for My Life, and it is published by Zondervan. It actually comes out today as we're recording this, Tuesday. You can pick it up at Amazon.com. I've gone through about the first half. It's less a wrestling book than it is a book about his faith and his transformation. But there's definitely a lot of really interesting tidbits about his wrestling career in there, stories I never knew. Anyway, Shawn Michaels was good enough to spend some time talking to me, looking back on some of his matches of the year, highs and lows. What were some of his favorite? What were some where he thought maybe they fell short a little bit? And let's go to that interview.
When you were wrestling, and certainly back in the 90s, I imagine less so in your last run, how much were things like that even on your radar? A Pro Wrestling Illustrated award, a PWI 500 #1 ranking, that sort of thing?
Well, it's always nice to get acknowledged. But truthfully, when after 2002, those things, and again, only from the standpoint of my life being different now, that those things, from a job standpoint, very flattering, very thankful to have achieved them, but I honestly, I think more eternally now, and you know, as nice as it is, you know, on my day of judgment, you know, I'm going to stand before God, and He's not going to ask me how many match of the years I won, or how many titles I won. That's probably not going to rank up real high with Him, and so certainly professionally, I'd say that's pretty nifty. And, you know, I guess jokingly say, boy, I must have really stunk in those years from 97 to 2001. So, but again, you know, it's nice. I mean, it's very nice, but, you know, for sure. And had you asked me in, you know, 95 and 96 and 97, they'd probably, you know, be, you know, way up on my list. It's just, now that's very different, and again, I guess, you know, I feel like my job is to raise two decent human beings, you know, my wife and I, and you know, and again, and hope that this book, you know, maybe, I don't know, maybe speaks to somebody in a way that, again, they have to look at themselves, you know, just like I had to look at myself and say, yeah, maybe, you know, maybe I need to change. So again, it's I as flattered as I am, I do, you know, have to put them, I think, you know, at a place that's, you know, a little more sensible.
Yeah. If I could ask you about a couple of those matches in particular, one that's interesting is that in 2007. You wrestled John Cena in the main event of WrestleMania 23, and despite winning, you know, stealing the show at WrestleMania year after year after year, you typically weren't in the main event. Here you were, wrestling for the world title, Ford Field, 80,000 people. I was there, and I think a lot of people thought it was a little bit of a disappointment. A very good match, but not that Shawn Michaels level blow your socks off match. And then, ironically, 2 weeks later, on Raw in England, you have a 1 hour match with John Cena, steal the show, and that becomes match of the year. Did you, can you talk a bit about that? Were you disappointed in the match at WrestleMania 23? And again, understanding that your priorities have changed a lot over the years, but was there any bit of you that wanted to prove that you could have that match? That's why you guys, you know, went the limits that you did in England those weeks later?
Well, I guess you got a couple questions there. So, no, I wasn't disappointed in the match. There's sometimes extenuating circumstances, so to speak. You know that you know things you can do, things you can't do in first match, you can't do in the second match, and sometimes that hamstrings you a smidge, I guess. And so I think that you know there was a certain, I guess, structure that the match at WrestleMania, had to have that the second one did not have to have. And I guess I looked at it from a standpoint. I mean, you know, for what it's worth, I wasn't supposed to be the main event of that WrestleMania either. So you know, I sort of got that one by circumstance. But I was pleased with the match. There were, as I say, you know, from a timing standpoint, and you know, and I guess having some understanding of where we were going, you know, and some of it knowing and some of it not knowing, quite honestly, that you know, makes you stretch for a match differently. I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a little guilty of if, you know, depending on how much I know, and I know there are times that people think, you know, I know everything under the sun, and I can say this much: it's one of those things, you know, that coming back to 2002, I made no attempt, you know, to really know what, you know. I mean, I guess I could have pushed that envelope. I recognize that you know, if I were to ask a lot of questions, I could get a lot of answers, but I never really asked. I felt like they'd tell me what I needed to know, and the rest I didn't care. But anyway, so I felt we did the best with what we, you know, the knowledge we had at WrestleMania. And I gotta be honest, I mean, I've never really, again, looked at it as that match was somehow, not, I don't know. You know what I mean? I've just never.
It was a very good match. Don't get me wrong.
And that's the thing. I mean, I don't, I guess you have to understand. I see everything in the rearview mirror now. And again, I'm just a thankful dude. But
it's almost. I'm sorry. I was going to say it's almost. You're a victim of your own incredibly high standards. That when you have that match that is only great or only really really good.
Exactly, and I guess that's what I'm saying is that and believe me, believe me, it's a catch-22 because I mean it's had matches that again if it's just good, like if it's just good like a number of the matches on the card, dude, that is, I mean I'm losing a step and I'm not good and I'm old and I'm over the hill and all that kind of stuff. So that and believe me, there came a point to where like I got that and I understood it, but even and again, I guess I like to think I've got pretty high standards, but there are times when I still chuckle at that because I'm just a human being, man.
Yeah.
But anyway, but yes, to your point, I mean that's the thing. I never know what I'm really supposed to say when somebody says, I mean, it was a really good match. This wasn't, it wasn't great.
Yeah.
And I just go, you are correct. I'll give you that. And I don't really know what else to say. Sorry that I gave you just a really good match.
Yeah. You should be ashamed of yourself, Shawn.
Exactly. Yeah.
I imagine that of all these that ended up being match of the year, the one that even you would have agreed would have been the most or least likely was Vince McMahon. Did you see that as a good match?
Yeah, I did, but different. I mean, but also clearly exactly what I wanted to do. Just to have one WrestleMania, just to have one. And I can remember. And I guess I'm always very fortunate that I think the company as a whole always really tried to look. I mean, especially after I came back, it wasn't about getting Shawn a main event spot at WrestleMania. It was always just giving me an opponent and an opportunity to do what I enjoy doing, and that's just going out there and really just trying to just have the best match I could have. Have something that people would remember. And again, not, I don't really like to say the term steal the show. All those things are so overused now. It's just makes you want to, I don't know. It sort of makes me regret never saying those things, because so many people say it now. But really, that's what it was. I mean, that people understood many years ago that, rightly or wrongly, it was more about just really having a performance, a match, with an individual that people would just go, wow, and they would just always remember it.
Yeah.
And not because there was a time, not for any particular reason, but dang, that was just good.
Yeah.
And so, they always made it a point to really try to find that guy for me around WrestleMania time. And I think they got a kick out of throwing me challenges to see if I could do it with this person or that person. But this was one WrestleMania where I just, said very early, hey, I'd like to not, have that kind of match. I'd like to have a WrestleMania where I can just sort of relax and maybe do something fun, nifty, different, from a wrestling standpoint. And
right.
Vince was that guy, and that sort of hardcore match was what we did. But to answer your question, I was surprised that that's something. Although again, Vince is a great storyteller, and there were so many great things we were allowed to do in that match that you can't always do. That I think that sometimes can especially with a guy like Vince who as Hunter would say, at best is limited. When you're allowed to use all sorts of different items and aspects, storytelling, tricks and things of that nature, it makes it easier to have what people would call a good match, or a match of the year in this case.
Yeah, and I've thought that you kind of have an uncredited other match of the year since your retirement, and that was playing referee in the match between Hunter and Undertaker at WrestleMania 28. And I've said you were every bit a part of that match, a performer in that match, as the other two. Did you see it that way? And did you get up for that match and stealing the show and performing with those other two guys, just as you did those other years when you were actually competing in a match?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, for sure. Simply, one, because I, love both the guys, and but I also felt compelled to make sure, because obviously a lot of it was based on my storyline and history with both individuals, and so therefore that obviously the referee role takes on a much bigger role. I mean, and so yeah, you want even though it's going to be it's supporting cast, so to speak. You're not a main character by any stretch. You're just part of the support, but it's important when you're maybe that link between the two, or a bridge, and a look for something that you do or say, or like as I say, in that predicament, I think it had more to do with look and emotion. Is important. Is important to help these two guys tell the story that they want to told. So yes, I did feel. I certainly, in all my I guess special referee roles over the years, that would by far be the biggest, and certainly the one that made me feel more like I was, the same way that I did when I was one of the guys actually wrestling the match. So, to answer your question, that's a big old affirmative.
Yeah, and I think that came through. Having been in so many great matches, so many PWI Match of the Years, could you share any insight on what makes a match great? What separates a very good match from a great one? How much of it is the action? How much of it is the storyline, the stage, the backstory, all that?
Well, I think that's changed over the years, and I think even and again, I always I appreciate that about PWI. I think perhaps earlier there was maybe a little more focus, but even though all aspects, psychology and storyline, timing were all important, I think percentage-wise, action might have tipped the scales in those earlier ones. I think in the later ones, psychology and attention to detail, emotion, and that emotion driving the story is what prevailed in the latter ones. I don't know that the facials of Marty and I, for example, in the early years, sold that as a match of the year candidate, so to speak, like the action did. And I think in those later years, whether it be with Flair or Taker or whomever, certainly facials and emotions drove that. I think more than the actual action, and I think that is sort of symbolic of how the wrestling business has evolved and changed over the years, which again is, I think, a very cool thing, and it's been a fun thing to